Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Monday, July the 15th, 2024. This evening we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Village Clerk Manal Desai.
Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting will come to order and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sutker?
Here.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn?
Here.
Trustee Johnson?
Here.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan?
Here.
Trustee Klein?
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Here, we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Pierce-Lovan. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? John?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to remove from the report of the village manager, item G from tonight's agenda.
It's removed. Is there anything else anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes. With that vote, the board has approved Margaret Van Steenderen to the Human Relations Commission. I believe, Margaret, stand up just for a moment. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to volunteer your time. We appreciate it. It's a very important commission, and they do great work, and I know they're going to benefit from your wealth of experience. Thank you for volunteering. Next item on the agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item A is regarding a presentation about gas-powered leaf blowers, and Lisa Sanzenbacher, our sustainability coordinator, is going to start the presentation, and Liz Zimmerman will join her.
Good evening. So the purpose of our presentation tonight is to outline an effective and equitable program in order to reduce the use of gas-powered leaf blowers here in our community. Here I'll just outline some of the problems that we all know about gas-powered leaf blowers. They're very loud. They emit a low, loud sound frequency that travels farther and penetrates windows. And they've known to be twice as loud as electric leaf blowers. They also emit high levels of localized pollution, which causes harm to human health, most affecting vulnerable populations like children, older adults, and people with asthma, heart, and lung disease. However, the workers are the most exposed to these damaging noise and pollutants. I would like to remind everyone about the Environmental Sustainability Plan. The overall goal is to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 35% below 2020 levels by 2030. And the transportation sector of the plan is forecasted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by nearly 80,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents if successful implementation of the plan occurs. Gas-powered lawn equipment consume fossil fuels emit greenhouse gas emissions like carbon dioxide and methane. Therefore, they are included in the plan as one strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Strategy 6, as it's called in the plan, TM6, calls to reduce the community-wide off-road lawn equipment annual emissions by 30% by 2030. And this results in a 0.2% decrease of greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation and mobility sector of the sustainability plan. The plan has a menu of action items that can be taken in order to reduce the emissions outlined in the plan. For example, strategy 6 has 3 action items. The first action was to explore a program to convert the fossil fuel burning equipment to electric, and we have done that. We have a very popular $50 rebate program for Skokie residents approved by the board's budget, and nearly almost all are processed already. Then the plan has TM 6.2 and 6.3. One is to establish a gas-powered lawn equipment phase-out ordinance, and the next is to explore opportunities to work with the landscaping equipment to eliminate the use of gas-powered lawn equipment and to encourage residents to talk to their landscapers. I invite my colleague Liz Zimmerman up here. In the coming slides, she is going to help explain why we recommend to flip these 2 actions in order to prioritize TM 6.3, the educational campaign of the gas-powered leaf blower phase-out.
Thank you. Just to provide some context and background of how we got our information, we reviewed the Regional Leaf Blower Working Group final report. That was a local report. There were municipalities on there. The Illinois Landscape Contractors Association helped put together that report, as well as some landscaping companies. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think one type of landscape company that was missing is the small family-owned landscaping company. And Skokie has a numerous amount of those landscaping companies that work in town. We also reviewed local codes, and we released a survey through the Northwest Municipal Conference to get more information from other communities on what they're doing. And I think most importantly, the village, we transitioned to a fully electric landscape fleet with all of our equipment in 2023. And we ourselves have been using that equipment for the last year. So we've learned a lot, and we've used that equipment through many seasons. So we're much better equipped with how that equipment works. There are 8 local municipalities that have seasonal bans, and by seasonal bans, generally speaking, what that means is they're banned, the gas-powered leaf blowers are banned in the summer when they're not needed as much. And so they're still allowed in the spring and fall cleanup seasons. 3 of those municipalities are not what we would consider Skokie's true comps, so it would be more of the North Shore communities. 1 municipality has a full year-round ban, that would be Evanston, and Oak Park is considering a full year-round ban next year. The report that I just spoke of, they do recommend reaching out. Each community is different, encouraging us to talk to our stakeholders and seeing what the needs of our own community are. And if a community wants to pursue a ban, the report definitely recommends doing that very slowly and with a large educational campaign on the front end. And so what we've learned with our own crew is that the commercial grade leaf blowers are simply not performing as well as the gas-powered leaf blowers. We're seeing them perform at about 60 to 70% of those gas-powered leaf blowers. We've also been following the news, and we've seen that the bans in the region have been controversial. It's a complex issue, and the reason why it's complex is we have different types of user groups, and they use the equipment in very different ways, and it really comes down to that. For homeowners and maybe small businesses that are DIY and they're doing their own landscaping, electric leaf blowers are a just fantastic option. We love it when there's a good solution. This is a good solution. I grew up, in the landscape industry and using the equipment, and I tell you, every time I had to go start one of a chainsaw or a mower, I always got anxiety and whether that pull cord was gonna work. And it's a new day. This equipment is easy to use. There's virtually no maintenance to it. It's quiet. We've got the $50 rebate. Before I knew I was gonna have to present, I went to the different box stores around. I couldn't even find a gas-powered leaf blower to buy for residential. I even asked an associate if I could purchase one, and he looked at me like, where have you been? These things haven't been for sale for years. So definitely a great option on the homeowner side. For our municipal landscape crew, and something similar, this might be like a school district or at times the park district, electric leaf blowers are what we would consider adequate. You could probably get by with them. So our crew, like I said, we've been testing out a lot of different equipment. There are some pros that we've found. The mowers and the small equipment, other than the leaf blowers, are working pretty well for us. They're making economical sense. They love the reduced noise, and they're finding either a similar performance or even some enhanced performance on things like our riding lawnmower. The cons on the commercial grade leaf blowers is that the battery is very heavy, and I kind of wish I would have brought it in tonight for people to sort of try. It is very heavy for the user.
What about the cost?
Yeah, I think we'll get to questions at the end.
Excuse me, who made this? Oh, I'm sorry.
Let her proceed, please.
Well, how long do we have to listen to this nonsense?
You don't have to stay if you don't want.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Let her finish her report.
And then early on, we found the equipment was difficult to even find and source and to purchase. For larger landscape companies and the park district, the electric leaf blowers are adequate on a case-by-case basis. I failed to mention that our municipal crews work an 8-hour shift. Many landscaping companies work a much longer shift and more days per week. The reason that we were able to transition is that we own a facility. That's a real key piece here. And we'll talk about that more on the next slide. The equipment is an investment. It certainly is expensive. When we talk about somebody transitioning to this equipment, you're talking about having to do electrical work. You need dedicated circuits. You need a lot of storage, and you need a lot of batteries, because these batteries are only lasting about an hour. And certain types of property are not a good fit, especially if they require a higher level of maintenance. Golf courses, athletic fields, walking paths, things like that. They're going to require more of like the gas power leaf blower, if just because of the size of the property, and if you need to maintain a property to a higher standard. And I think this is the key slide to this presentation here when we talk about the smaller landscapers that don't have a facility. The electric leaf blowers are not a good fit, and we have got some equity considerations here. These gas power leaf blower bans disproportionately affect the small and often minority-owned landscaping companies. The reason why is they either don't have a facility or they're working out of a satellite facility that might be very far south, very far west, a lot of drive time. And so what we find is their trailer is their working office. They're often parked in parking lots, in Skokie. When there's no facility, there's no place to charge, and it's as simple as that. They're not able to charge at home or customer's home because, again, the commercial equipment is much different than the homeowner equipment. We're talking about a dedicated circuit and a lot more electricity than for those residential units. And from a labor standpoint, the electric leaf blowers, because they're not as powerful, when you're doing landscaping work for the entire day, you are talking about extra labor, extra bodies, more cost. And so there are alternatives right now that we can look at. I think when we're talking about sustainability, we always have to take a step back and start at the conservation level. And so it's as easy as that. When you're brushing your teeth and you're turning off the faucet, or you're walking out of the room and you're turning off the lights, the number one step in my mind is, how do we use leaf blowers less? We do recommend that companies transition if it's feasible and they have a facility, There is customer demand out there. There's a lot of customer demand out there. It might be a very good business model to look into doing this. There are ways to not use the leaf blowers as much, such as leave the leaves, mulching the grass clippings, and just leaving them on the lawn because they are fertilizer. And as they're replacing equipment, replace mowing service when it isn't needed. I think right now, this time of year, this is what drives me crazy, is seeing the mowers go around and mowing lawn, and it doesn't even need to be mowed. So talk with your landscapers talk with your customers, and we recommend substituting surfaces. So there's always landscaping work to be done, edging beds, weeding, planting natives, composting. Just don't mow your lawn if it doesn't need to be mowed. We do recommend, if there's any landscapers in the audience, we love the iLandscape Association. They have wonderful programming at very affordable prices, and they often have that in bilingual. We developed a flyer that both residents and landscapers are able to use with just some very simple, sustainable landscaping, and we did that in English and Spanish to just make that an easier process. And then one of the things I'm most proud of is later this summer or early fall, we do want to host a field day and showcase our equipment. Like I said, much of the equipment is working. I think there's a lot of silver linings in this process, and we want to share that information, and we want to bring people in and show them how we charge. We're willing to answer any question on cost and those sorts of things. And we want to share the things that make sense.
Thank you. Did you? Yes, you can. You can come up to the microphone and ask a question if you like. Yes. Everybody, just so everybody knows, everybody gets 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Why did she get an introduction?
Because this is not equal opportunity. She works for the village.
Oh, I see.
We asked Liz and Lisa to do research and present a report to the village board.
All right. Okay, well, I see this report as a bunch of nonsense. Hey, I do. I see it as nonsense.
No, sir.
You're talking about.
Sir,
you're
talk to the
talking
board.
about.
We have your name, please.
I'm Kevin.
Okay.
I've been a Skokie resident for over 30 years, and I own a small business. And this presentation on let's transition into this. Let's transition into these electric blowers that even you said they're pretty much damn useless, and they're really expensive. And these batteries cost $300 a piece, and I need 2 of them for one blower that costs $1,500 that may or may not last a year, and you don't have technicians to fix these things. And another thing, besides all that, let the market decide this stuff. You're talking about banning gas blowers. Then I know it doesn't stop there. You're gonna go to mowers, you're gonna go to this, you're gonna go to that, because Illinois' goal is to eliminate the gas engine, which is absolutely absurd. This will collapse from its own weight because it's economically unsustainable, because these villages are subsidizing certain people to get these equipment out there, and it's nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. The free market does not tolerate it, and coming up with this kind of stuff, and then your benevolency is gonna let us phase our equipment out over time. Well, I say, who the heck are you people? Who are you? What do you think you're doing? You're not helping anything. You're destroying things with the pretense of saying you're helping the ecology. You're not. You're not. Absolutely not. You're just destroying small businesses, and that's all you're doing. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. I don't know, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
My name's Steve Wardauer. I'm a resident of Skokie, and I love the city services, and I'm very grateful to the board for all the wonderful things that Skokie provides. I was just wondering, who made the report? Who made this report? This specific report that you,
Sir,
you said the
sir,
recommendation.
let the village man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the village staff put it together. It was a
Gotcha.
combination of the manager's office, sustainability coordinator, the public works department. It was a team effort of a number of individuals.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I actually take, and I know probably have 2 minutes, but I take the opposing view. I think these are horrific things that pollute our environment, poison our children on a regular basis. And the fact that we understand this now, I think anything less than an outright ban of it, the low-hanging fruit is the leaf blowers. Just get rid of them. I think anything less, and I say this with a lot of respect for this committee, that it's a dereliction of duty. Now that we know just how detrimental they are to the environment, how they're poisoning our children on a regular basis, the noise pollution is obnoxious. Of course, I'm sensitive to the comments of the gentleman with a business, and I understand that, but businesses need to adapt to the needs of the people, not the other way around. And we have an environmental crisis, and it's only getting worse. Sir, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Sir,
I listened to what you had to say. That's not the way to get things done.
hey,
And, you know, his concerns are real. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I get that. But when the film and television business changed when we went through the pandemic, everybody had a shift. Everybody had to realize what they needed to do to sustain their business or go under, and we did. So right now, and the obnoxious noise that this generate, these leaf blowers are just insane. And I started doing reading more and more about how detrimental they are to our kids. They're poisoning our kids and our families on a regular basis. And I just think it's time that we just ban them and then phase the other stuff out. I don't think we should be sensitive so much to businesses. It's like if somebody was selling crack on the corner, should we be sensitive to like, oh, well, they have to sustain their business? No, they're killing our children, they're killing our communities. And I think that this is much worse than we think. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
thank you. Lauren, are you going to speak?
I had some questions about stuff that was in the presentation. Listed as cons, it said the battery only lasts for an hour, but Oak Park built its own solar-powered charging like truck trailer. So I don't see like how, it's not on the market. They had to build it themselves, but they did build it. So that seems like one option for a lot of these smaller businesses, and I was just having a conversation with somebody out there who was saying, well, you know, these companies are not necessarily based in Skokie, so like how much are we going to give them rebates to switch over, and what kinds of things can we do? And then one of the other cons was listed not as powerful, but I think that's a good thing because then there's less disruption to the nests and stuff. And right now, a lot of these landscapers are just blowing their leaves into the street or into the neighbors' yards. In terms of mulching stuff, they take the grass clippings and dump it on the leaf piles in the fall, which they're not supposed to do, but they do it anyway, and it saves them money, right? So, and as far as letting the market decide, we've let the market decide for 50 years, and it's not made the right decision. So it's time for the government to step in and say, here's what needs to happen if we want to keep living on the surface of this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, this is not a sporting event. We're trying to discuss public policy. So I understand where you're coming from. Thank you. Trustee
Actually,
Johnson.
I wanted to ask the staff presenters about the work that has already been done last year and earlier this year on a draft ordinance. Or John, or anyone.
Yes, that's true. We drafted an ordinance per the recommendations of the working group. However, there are some aspects of it that we see in our peer communities that don't work quite as well. So that's why it's still in draft mode. And that we also have, we think, a more effective way to reduce, the overall picture is to reduce the fossil fuel burned in lawn equipment. So we think we have a pretty effective way to do so.
In the draft work that y'all have done, what was the proposed timeline for a phase out? Was it 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? What was the kind of phase out timeline in the draft?
It was several years. I don't recall the specifics as we were speaking, but part of the thought of that was that the commercial grade equipment was going to improve over time. And as we got into refining the ordinance, we became aware that it is not likely that the commercial grade equipment is going to be improving within that timeline. So it became out of sync with the rollout of an actual ban. And so that's part of the reason that there's not an ordinance being recommended this evening. But it's also coming back to the point that the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that is being reduced by landscape equipment is minor. And then when you only carve out, when we would only carve out one piece of equipment, that being the gas-powered leaf blowers, it becomes even less of an impact. And so.
Well, first of all, I mean, our sustainability plan goal is not to phase out gas-powered leaf blowers, but to phase out gas-powered lawn equipment, which would include lawn mowers and weed whackers and all sorts of stuff. And I know that this isn't a huge piece of the pie in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, but there's also the noise emissions. There's also all these other chemicals and substances that are emitted through air pollution. I mean, bees emit carcinogens, besides just carbon dioxide. I, for one, I really appreciate the work that the Public Works Department has done to model this transition. I know Evanston has faced a lot of backlash for their ordinance, and I was really surprised to hear that Evanston kind of exempted themselves from their work. I really appreciate that we're kind of trying to lead by example here. And I appreciate all the education work that y'all are doing. I would very much love for us to proceed with the draft ordinance, just because there's a huge timeline. If we approve this by the end of this year, this wouldn't take into effect until early 2027, early 2028 maybe. I mean, and I really think nothing is going to educate residents more than kind of a timeline and an urge from the village. So at least from where I'm standing, I would love for us to proceed with the draft ordinance. Also, one more point. I know I'm talking too much, but I'm really sad that our draft ordinance has been caught up by this very fair equity issue about small companies that do landscaping work, this fear that we're going to disproportionately harm them. But the paradox of that was in slide 2, which talked about how these landscapers are the folks who are most impacted and most harmed by the noise and air, the noise emissions and the air pollution from these machines. If you're working all day long holding or wearing a gas-powered leaf blower, you're being harmed more than anyone. So I get that there's pushback from landscapers, but these are genuinely the folks who are most harmed. So that's an equity issue too. I don't know if it's going to go through, but I will make a motion. I move that we direct staff to, by the end of 2024, present the board with a draft ordinance to slowly phase out gas-powered lawn equipment in the village.
So discussion is over?
No. Okay. Fails for lack of a second. Trustee Klein.
Yeah, I have a couple things, and just, I talked to a gentleman, Scott Scholar's nephew, who runs Contour Landscaping. And he had told me that he, in his leaf blowers, is now 100% electric. And the thing that he impressed upon me is that he had to have a great investment in his building, where he had to put charging stations and buy many additional batteries to accomplish this goal. So what I'm saying is it's a very big expense, and anytime we're dealing with businesses, expenses matter. I talked to a Mr. Abraham from Abraham Landscaping and a gentleman named Rodriguez from Rodriguez Landscaping, who are quote-unquote the small landscapers. And they impressed upon me, like Liz had stated, that they don't have the infrastructure to accomplish this at this time. So the key word I really wanted, my question is that you had stated that this is gonna be a slow indoctrination period. Can we define slow? Or are we gonna wait until something else you said, that technology's not there, we all know that. So are we gonna wait until technology comes, which I have no problem with, I'm not debating the pros and cons here, I'm just trying to get all the info out. And
John?
remember, somebody mentioned that the public has to be educated. And once these small landscapers have to make this extra expense, the public's gonna get educated because prices have to go up.
As far as the technology and the slow rollout, you know, I don't know when that would be, because it's not, I think we're all thinking that the leaf blower technology needs to get better, or the battery technology needs to get better. When you don't have a facility to charge, the charging infrastructure is really the technology that needs to get better. You know, so, and just from a sustainability standpoint, if you remember the plan, a lot of our greenhouse gas emissions come from facilities and they come from miles traveled. And so these small landscape companies that are parking their trailers in Skokie, in a sense, are very sustainable in one sense. They're not, you know, they're reducing their miles traveled, and they don't have a facility that they're kind of not using, you know, they're in the winter months and so forth. So they don't have the electricity and the gas for a facility. And so I don't know, you know, it would be case by case on each, you know, company, but it might not even be the most sustainable option to force them into facilities or renting facilities in order to do this charge. I don't know the math on that, but it's very possible that wouldn't work out. And so I don't have a good answer, Ralph, but I don't see the infrastructure on the charging side changing that dramatically in the next couple of years. You know, we're not even probably there yet for cars and vehicles, and so it would be, you know, that type of thing where maybe there would be, you know, facilities that the landscapers could take their equipment to and charge overnight, or some sort of model like that, and I've never heard of that yet, so.
All right, well, just one other thing. My landscaper comes up. The guy edges first, gas edger, okay? He's there 2 minutes. The guy mows, he's there 5 minutes. Then comes the blower. He's there 2 minutes. So this thing about this blower always on, I'm not seeing it just from my observations. And I'm not saying it's scientific. It's me sitting in my living room watching the guy because I'm bored. So I just want to throw this out there that we're really going after this industry, and in my opinion, it's minute as far as the environment is concerned. It's so minute, it's not even mentionable to me.
Trustee Kuhn?
I don't know if you have the answers to this, but I was thinking, like, if there were to be a community resource that the village would potentially provide and want to provide the infrastructure to support those small businesses, like, how much of an investment are we talking about? And I'm thinking also about the potential change in technology and how
Yeah.
that might evolve over time.
I don't think we have the answer for like a village-wide, but I'm gonna bring our operations manager, Brad Magi, up to just kind of talk about what it might cost to do one facility, you know, and that might give you an idea.
Great, thank you.
Before Brad talks, I just wanted to clarify that the $50 rebate is for Skokie residents only, so the homeowners of small DIY. Yeah, that's what the rebate is.
Hi. I don't have a direct answer what it would cost, but I do know when we converted our crew, we had to put dedicated 20 amp circuits out there. Our public works facility is a little bit older, and trying to find dedicated circuits for something new like this is pretty difficult. When we're exploring the electric vehicles, we're running into that problem as well at all our facilities. So it just, there's a large expense to get that infrastructure upgraded because it might not just be running a circuit, it could be a new panel or upgrading your service as well.
In terms of scale, like if we were to try to provide a resource for the businesses and try to do it at scale, I would imagine it'll be much more complex. And again, the technology's evolving. We don't know how much we should invest to begin with as the technology's evolving.
Yes.
Right.
I can add in a bit to that. One of the landscaping companies that staff talked to estimated that they had put $100,000 investment in for their company to be able to use battery-powered, source of fuel or source of energy for their leaf blowers. So just as one example of approximately $100,000 investment.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Pearce-Logan.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I commend the village for taking the leap forward and being able to find a way. I'm glad we had the wherewithal and were able to. And I appreciate the honest report that you really did weigh in on the pros and cons. But I have been concerned about the landscaping businesses, and I have been concerned. We're talking about the small businesses who I don't believe will be able to do this. And in addition to that, I think that there are many landscaping businesses outside of the village that people are utilizing. And I think if we go down this path, I am afraid, as we said, we'll do the leaf blowers, and then it's gonna be the next piece of equipment, the next piece of equipment. People aren't gonna work in the village. It's just that simple. They're going to say, we're not gonna make this investment. $100,000, you said, was just leaf blowers. It's not even, you're talking about the lawn mowers and every other piece of equipment. So if I was a business owner and I was asked by one village or two because of Evanston to make this change, I would say, you know what, I'm not investing like that. I have 100 other different places we could go and we can maintain our business. So then as a resident or prospective resident, I'd be concerned and think, well, why would I move to Skokie if I could go someplace else that is another nice community, but I could get the services and not have to worry about that. So there's another rabbit hole that I think we go through that we really need to think about. Thank you.
Trustee Sucker.
Well, as some of you know, I walk a lot in Skokie, and the number one thing that people come up and complain to me about while I'm walking are the leaf blowers. And I have neighbors who literally wear their masks that they learned to wear during COVID when they're walking around this kind of equipment. So I think what they presented tonight is much more of a compromise than I even thought would be presented tonight. So I just know that it is a big concern of people in the neighborhood about health and safety, and it's a public health issue. So I just want that to be considered also. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brian Levinson. As I was listening to the discussion, I didn't come tonight with the intent of commenting, but I just wanted to convey a conversation I had last year with my landscaper, who's a Skokie-based small businessman. He lives in Skokie. We were having a conversation on my front lawn, and he said that he has stopped servicing Evanston because of the ban. He simply couldn't adapt. He couldn't afford to adapt. In turn, his prices went up because he needed to now concentrate his business in areas outside of Evanston. And he said, if this continues, he simply will go out of business. And this is a Skokie resident, been servicing the community for decades. So my intent wasn't to comment here, but Trustee Slovin's comments and Klein, the reality is this isn't conjecture. I actually had this conversation with a small business owner within the last 12 months, so I just thought I would convey that.
Thank you.
Oh, just to echo what Trustee Sutker said, this is one of the issues I hear most about from residents. In the past 3 years, I get a call or an email probably at least once a month from a resident about gas-powered lawn equipment. And very rarely is it about the emissions. It's almost always about the noise. Maybe I'm asking a question that doesn't have an answer, but if we're not going to, what is our timeline? We have committed to phasing out gas-powered lawn equipment by, at the latest, 2030. So I guess, how long are we going to wait before we examine an ordinance?
John? Go ahead.
So what's being recommended tonight is to work on education, has been outlined. And so we will do that for the next 12 months, and then we'll report back, and we'll include the feedback that we have received this evening as we roll out that education.
I will say, this will be my final comment. You know, there are so many action items in our sustainability plan that are truly difficult to achieve. This is not even close to one of the most difficult action items in our sustainability plan. There's so much in there that is going to require political will. And, you know, prioritizing business over the environment is, you know, why we're dealing with climate change. And so there are a lot of hard decisions that we're going to have to make. There are, you know, a lot of decisions that are going to require some political will, and there's going to be pushback. But these are, you know, our sustainability plan is really solid, and the action items are really solid. And personally, I would really love to see us move forward with an ordinance as soon as possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Emmy Yamauchi, Skokie resident. I just want to say, for those of you old enough, for 12 years of my life, we used rakes. I think rakes are great. They're cheap, easy to store. Between rakes and the brooms, I think that works. Thank you.
Thank you. That's one vote for rakes.
Item B is regarding the addition of Housing Subcommittee of the Plan Commission to the Village Code. The Village Board recently adopted an ordinance amending Chapter 46 and 58 of the Village Code pertaining to affordable housing. One clause establishes the Housing Subcommittee of the Village Plan Commission. The mayor and board are respectfully requested to authorize Corporation Council to draft the applicable code sections within Chapter 2, Article 7, to update the village code to reflect the addition of the Housing Subcommittee of the Village's Plan Commission.
Okay. Yes, sir. Very briefly, we're moving on.
I just wanted to acknowledge what Trustee Johnson said. I think that's really an appropriate way to view it. It's not an easy thing, and I understand that, but what I noticed today, I looked up, according to the Environment America Research and Policy Center, it said in 2020, fossil fuel-powered lawn equipment emitted more than 30 million tons of carbon dioxide, the leading driver of climate change. To put that in context, that's as much carbon pollution as comes out of the tailpipes of 6.6 million cars over the course of a year. And that's more carbon pollution emitted by gas-powered lawn equipment in 1 year than was emitted by the entire city of Los Angeles in 2021. And if you've ever been to Los Angeles, there's a lot of cars there. So, I mean, I get that this is a difficult decision, but this isn't going away, and we have to make hard choices to lead and have Skokie residents feel safe and secure. And the noise is really, really harmful in addition to the air pollution. Thanks.
We're moving in that direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you share that information with Lisa Sanzenbacher? She's standing right in front of you. If you would just give her the citation. Thank you. John?
So item B is before you to have the Corporation Council draft the applicable code sections within Chapter 2 to update the village code to reflect the addition of the Housing Subcommittee of the Village's Plan Commission.
A motion is in order. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Comments, questions? Okay.
I have a lot of comments, but, y'all, we talked, I mean, We've had local housing advocates for almost 2 years now advocating for a full-blown independent housing commission. And we talked about this last May when we moved forward with some of our plan commission and staff recommendations about affordable housing. What is the advantage of moving forward with making this temporary subcommittee a permanent body as opposed to creating a full-blown independent housing commission?
So the group has been operating as a subcommittee, and the legislation that was before the board on May 6th moved to make that subcommittee permanent. And so the thought is to have a group of experts in a subcommittee form to advise the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission is responsible for land use and is a advisory board and a group that works very closely with the village board on a regular basis. And so by having a very broad membership of the subcommittee serving the Plan Commission, that was decided to be the structure that would best serve the needs of the community in order to address housing and in the context of health, land use, economic development, human relations, and all of those needs. And so the subcommittee has been the structure that has been talked about for a number of months.
But this recommendation has not come from the subcommittee itself. I want us to kind of take us back to, because we've kind of lost track of the vision of a full-blown housing commission. In mid-May, May 15th last year, when we approved this temporary subcommittee, Trustee Robinson motioned, and I seconded, that we ask this subcommittee to advise us on creating a full-blown housing commission. And there was a motion, there was a second. Mayor, you said we shouldn't vote on this because you would just direct the commission to do that, and that's exactly what you did. You emailed all the chairs of the commission, and you told them that part of this project is to recommend the best way for the village board to create an advisory housing commission to help guide future policies for the village. But that never happened. The subcommittee helped review an update of the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan, but they did not discuss or review anything related to an advisory housing commission. So, the direction that we gave this subcommittee has really been lost, and now we've gone this alternate path that we never really planned on, which is to make this temporary subcommittee something permanent. I guess I'm just gonna make a motion. Before we proceed with any proposal for a housing-related commission or subcommittee, I move that we ask the temporary housing subcommittee to meet, to finish its work, and to recommend the best way for the board to create an advisory housing commission.
Dies for lack of a second.
Why did this part of the subcommittee's plan get discarded along the way?
The subcommittee talked about this quite a bit, and this proposal was talked with the subcommittee about. And so there was a lot on the plate of that group of volunteers, but this has evolved out of that process. That's why it's the recommendation.
I spoke with multiple members of the subcommittee before this meeting tonight, and I asked them what kind of conversation they had about this, and they said they did not. They said they were informed that they should really keep their conversation limited to the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. Sorry.
Trustee Sullivan.
This is gonna come from a place of confusion, and I don't understand what the problem is of having a subcommittee. I mean, we're getting a housing committee. It's doing everything that you have basically requested of this board. So we are continuing in the same light. To me, it's potatoes and potatoes. We're getting a committee that is going to be, and if you look at who would exist from this, it's a well-balanced, looks like, commission, subcommittee, for the housing chapter of the village comprehensive plan. It seems to me this shouldn't be something that there should be a problem with. I don't understand this at all.
Personally, I think this is kind of a half measure. I really think this subcommittee is not gonna be as effective as a full-blown independent housing commission made up of completely housing experts. That's my opinion.
Well, they did a good job in putting together the chapter for the comprehensive plan. There's no reason to think that they won't do an equally good job particularly given the makeup that John's suggesting. It's a mixture of volunteers from various commissions as well as residents who are not on a commission. As Trustee Peter Slovan has said, it's an objection in pursuit of a cause. The subcommittee worked very well. They were given a timeline. This evening, we will receive a report from them. They did a very good job. And there's no reason to think that the subcommittee won't do an equally good job.
I will say, I don't want to be too critical, but I don't find that description to be totally accurate.
It's a question of opinion.
This chapter that we're going to review later, it was not written by this subcommittee. It was written by village staff and then reviewed by this subcommittee. And this subcommittee did not always function very well. It had really poor attendance. There were some members who never showed up. I'm not sure why. Also, this, why I think it might be less effective than an independent housing commission is they would meet quarterly. They'd meet probably
Mayor,
half or
may
a third as often as a full-blown housing commission.
May I?
Yes.
In regard to people showing up and not showing up, people are volunteers. I mean, you can only have so much expectations of people who volunteer, and I'm appreciative for every moment that they give us, but that's why sometimes it's the professionals who have to take guidance from the volunteers and draw up the plan. I would not expect a volunteer to draw up an entire plan for this village. I would expect them to guide the staff, and I think that that's exactly what took place.
I really think the subcommittee is a real half measure. I think it's not nearly what housing advocates have been asking for 2 years, which is an independent housing commission. It doesn't have my support. I'll be voting
Okay.
against it.
You're welcome to vote. Yes, ma'am. Trustee Kuhn.
Yeah, I really don't have a strong opinion either way with having a separate housing commission or a subcommittee of the planning commission. My main concern is to make sure that the work is being done, that there is the establishment of a permanent body that will be able to advise the board on housing issues. And I would like to see that we continue to evaluate the progress of the subcommittee, and if there is a necessity to move forward with modifying that structure to be a separate housing commission, I'd be open to that as well. But I think right now I'd rather have a permanent body that can address that, and that's in the form of the subcommittee. I think that as long as they're able to deliver on what they're expected to do, then I'm satisfied with that.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
As one of the people who was advocating for affordable housing, I do want to say that it truly was, I think, everyone's expectation that there would be an independent housing commission that would come out of this, and that is why I would be interested in seeing the subcommittee's recommendation and report. If that turns out to be the case, or even if not, if you decide to continue with the subcommittee, I would certainly hope that you would open everything again to applications. It wouldn't just be moving across the aisle from subcommittee to now, or temporary subcommittee to permanent subcommittee. I think it would bear having open applications again for folks who want to volunteer for that subcommittee.
That would be the expectation.
I would like to see your definition of the group of experts who are going to be on this. I'm concerned about the housing chapter because one of the other clear understandings that came out of the establishment of the subcommittee was that they were going to at least plant the seeds for a comprehensive housing study to be done. Instead, we now have this housing chapter that's been done that's based on a comprehensive plan and a study that was done many years ago. So we aren't operating with any new valid data or expert opinion on the housing chapter. I find that concerning. Lastly, having the subcommittee be part of the Plan Commission, I really would have liked to have seen people at least being put on a par with buildings, if not being superior to buildings.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
I vote nay.
Trustee Purslovan. Trustee Klein.
I vote aye.
Trustee, Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Items C, D, E, F, H, and I were approved as part of tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report this evening.
Thank you. Next item is report of our corporation counsel, Michael Lorge.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. Good evening, everyone. Items A, B, and C are ordinances which are on the consent agenda at the beginning of tonight's meeting were adopted at that time. Item D is a ordinance which is on the agenda for second reading tonight and adoption. The first reading was on July 1st, 2024. I'm looking at that date to be sure. Yes. This is a routine and annual ordinance which will provide for and make an appropriation for the following entities: the Village of Skokie, the Skokie Public Library, the Firefighters Pension Fund, the Police Pension Fund, the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, the Motor Fuel Tax Fund, the Community Development Block Grant Fund, the Economic Development Fund, the Water Revenue Fund, the Capital Project Fund, the Visitors Bureau Fund, the Casualty and Life Insurance Fund,
Self-insurance.
Self-insurance fund, the Local Fuel Tax Fund, the Wireless Alarm Fund, the Payment of Principal and Interest on General Obligation Debts, the Science and Technology Tax Increment Financing Fund, the West Dempster Street Tax Increment Financing Fund, the Oakton Street Niles Avenue Tax Increment Fund, Financing Fund, the Performing Arts Center Fund, and the SSA number 10 Fund. And all of this would be for the fiscal year May 1st, 2024, ending April 30th, 2025. There was a memorandum in your packets dated June 21 from our Finance Director, Julian Prendy, who is with us here tonight if there are any questions.
And this also includes the pension stabilization fund.
Correct. Mayor, I would request board action on this ordinance tonight.
A motion is in order on an appropriation ordinance for the Village of Skokie. Trustee Johnson, seconded by Trustee Klein. Are there any comments or questions? If not, I'll call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Purslovan. Trustee Klein. Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Item E is an ordinance which is on the agenda for second reading tonight as well and for adoption. The first reading was also on July 1st, 2024. Item E is on the agenda as an amendment to Chapter 46, Section 46-193 of the Skokie Village Code pertaining to water rates. As outlined in the FY 2025 budget, which was presented to the Mayor and Board of Trustees during the April budget hearings, this amendment includes a 46 cent per 100 cubic feet increase in the water rate. This increase will fund all water-related activities, including a portion of water infrastructure improvements that are necessary. Likewise, a memorandum was in your packet from our Finance Director, Julian Prendy, who is still in the room if we have any questions.
A motion on amending Chapter 46, Article 6, Section 46-193 of the Village Code pertaining to water rates is in order. Trustee Kuhn, seconded by Trustee Klein. Are there any comments or questions? If not, call the roll.
Trustee Sucker.
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Purslovan. Trustee Klein. Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Finally, item F is an ordinance which is on the agenda for first reading tonight and will be on the agenda for second reading on the August 5th, 2024 meeting. This annual ordinance will establish the compensation for the village manager, deputy village clerk, corporation counsel, and assistant corporation counsels for FY 2025, and this is pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 3 of the Village Code. This ordinance is consistent with the mayor and board of trustees' directions, which came from the budget planning for FY 2025 for the village, and is a cost of living adjustment. Mayor, unless there are any questions, this would conclude my report.
Are there any comments or questions? If not, yes.
Are there any comments from the trustees before I? All right, I'm not gonna ask any questions. I'm just gonna read a short statement. Colleagues, just as I did last time, I'm voting against this ordinance because I'm opposed to the political hiring practices in our legal department, particularly with the public employment and compensation of Corporation Counsel Lorge and Assistant Corporation Counsel McCarthy. I have personally witnessed and experienced their misconduct and ethics violations in the performance of their official duties, going back to December 2020, when they personally attempted to bribe and threaten me when I was a candidate for office. I cannot, in good conscience, support their continued employment and compensation by the village. That's how I'm voting. I would argue that none of the other members of this board should be voting on this ordinance at all because of your conflicts of interest with Corporation Counsels Lorge and McCarthy. All of you have significant personal, financial, and political relationships with these two individuals, and our village code dictates that none of you are allowed to participate in this vote if you have a financial or personal interest that is incompatible with your duties or would impair your judgment. Right now, if any of you vote aye, you will be voting to steer over $421,000 of public money to your own political party and political campaign leaders. This is political hiring. And if you do not recuse yourselves from this vote, I believe you will be committing ethics violations again.
There is, we've discussed this many times previously. The second reading will be at the next village board meeting on August the 5th, 2024. Next item on the agenda are 2 items of unfinished business. First one is consideration of putting on the ballot a ranked choice voting referendum. Mr. Euler, welcome
evening.
back.
It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. You have before you this evening, for second reading, a resolution for consideration of placement on the ballot, a public question regarding changing your system of voting in the village of Skokie to a ranked choice voting system. There were a few issues raised at your last meeting that members of the board had raised. I can address those briefly. One of those was Trustee Johnson asked for a wording clarification. In the referendum question, we have made that change from 33% to a third. There was a question from another trustee regarding the state task force. And I believe it was the timing of the work of that task force, whether we could incorporate that successfully into the question itself. I did give that serious thought, and I would not recommend we include that timing. That is not to say that that timing is not important, but I think as an element of the question, it could create a vulnerability in the question itself. But that's obviously up to the Board of Trustees to make a decision on. So those are the 2 questions. The last issue that I think came up several times was just additional information on ranked choice voting itself, the pros and cons. I was not prepared to address that at our last discussion. I did try to find information for you to access that was neutral in some respects, and information that came from both sides of this question philosophically. If you had a chance to look at that information, I can try to address any additional questions you might have, but that's the information I have brought to you this evening.
Mayor, go ahead.
Do you have any additional or new insights into the status of the report from the commission or from the Cook County clerk?
I do. I have tried to keep track. You may have done the same with the operations of the task force. It's a public entity, a public group. Its meetings are accessible by Zoom and in person if you care to attend those meetings in person. The task force has finished its work. The work that it was engaged in took about 1.5 years, 2 years. As I understand it, the task force is not going to be making any recommendations for a statewide change to allow for ranked choice voting. I don't know the details of those discussions as to why we won't receive recommendations, but that's my understanding. The co-chair of the committee, Senator Laura Murphy, did indicate at the last meeting of the task force that it is her belief that a change to the election code will be needed in order to be able to implement a system like a ranked choice voting system in Illinois. There are a number of issues that have arisen in the discussions regarding ranked choice voting, and her ultimate conclusions, I believe, are that we need a change, or we will need a change to the Illinois election code in order to be able to implement this kind of a system.
And have you had any discussions, or do you have any insight into the status of implementing the system in Evanston by the clerk, Cook County clerk?
As I understand this, the city clerk in Evanston is one of the members of the task force. They have all the information that's available from this task force. There were no recommendations made either by the city clerk in Evanston that I believe could move this process forward to implement ranked choice voting. That was not generally, the conclusions were generally drawn by this task force. There were a number of county clerks that are sitting on this task force and are part of this effort as well. Their general consensus, as you can imagine, is that their legacy machinery, election equipment, is not prepared, is not equipped to make this kind of a change without significant additional resources.
Mayor, I just, I'm not interrupting, I think you've completed that part. I just want to clarify for everyone that in regard to this item, while on page 2 of 9, the 1/3 was inserted by outside counsel, it did not carry all the way through on page 3, and we noticed on page 4. We're going to consider that a Scribner's error in terms of anything you do tonight, and we will make sure that the 1/3 carries through rather than the 33%. And that was your intention, I believe.
Yes, it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Sucker.
Can you explain, when you say there would be a vulnerability if we put anything about the state on there? Because I think you understand our concern. Like, if we put this on the ballot, but the state, but the county isn't ready for it and the state isn't going to make any changes, how does that work?
Right, so I think I indicated that I'm not suggesting that is not an important, if not a critical, consideration going forward. But to embed that timing, or to attempt to embed the timing into this question without being able to fix some kind of certain time frame, we would be asking voters to approve a tentative timeline for referendum. I think that can create some concerns. And again, that's not to say it's not an important piece of the task force's work and their ultimate recommendations.
It's just not concrete enough. It's not concrete enough to put into the.
These kinds of questions are supposed to be self-implementing. There
Yeah.
are not supposed to be other questions that arise as a voter considers whether or not to vote yes or no.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
Trustee Klein.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just want to go over a couple points. The first point that I have been told by an elected official that more municipalities have undone ranked choice voting than that actually have it. Do you have any knowledge to that statement?
I do not. I think the question arose last time you discussed this at your last meeting in regard to how many states have adopted this system. There are currently 2 states in the United States that have adopted a ranked choice voting system of some kind, Maine and Alaska. So it has not become a standardized practice at a state level at this point. And there are other local governments that have moved in the direction of ranked choice voting. But as for Illinois, the other states across the country, this is not a widespread practice at this point.
I also made a call to the Cook County Board of Elections to try to get some kind of, that was an adventure in itself. And after being passed around, I finally got a young lady who, I told her I would not quote her, but her answer, I asked her about this, and she said, quote, "That's at least 10 years away." Can you give me your opinion on that?
I don't know if I have an opinion on the timeline. I do believe our office does spend a lot of time on election work as we approach the actual election processes. And the structure of the voting tabulation equipment in your voting places, local voting booths, is a complicated set of equipment. It is a fixed process and equipment base that does not currently accommodate ranked choice voting. Now, that doesn't mean ranked choice voting is not an idea that can be considered. It is a new idea for municipalities to take a look at, but our voting systems require resources, software, money, and without those things in place, I don't think we can simply assume that we're prepared to implement a brand new voting system overnight without appropriate resources and logistics in place.
So you
And a
would,
change in state law.
And I won't give you my personal opinion on that,
Well,
but
that's what the
but the
vice chair said.
task force, I believe, has reached the conclusion that we would also need direction from the Illinois General Assembly.
so this 10-year number is not pie in the sky.
I would not say it's pie in the sky.
Thank you.
Trustee Pierce-Sullivan.
Thank you. Thank you again for all the work that you have done in informing us and educating us. And ironically, Trustee Klein, I spoke to a few legislators that I work with, and asked also about ranked choice voting and where we are with Senator Murphy's subcommittee, et cetera. And it was also told that they have, convened and that they've concluded that they are not going to continue with any kind of discussion about ranked choice voting, and that a few of the legislators also told me we're at least 10 years away. So that number came up, which I found fascinating. You mentioned it, 10 years away from ever considering it or implementing it in Illinois. It's not even on the horizon right now, that it is not recognized by the state of Illinois. So everything that you're saying is saying legislators have concurred. And I say that I'm glad we've done our due diligence. We've looked at it. We've spent money on it. We've done it legally. And I think at this point, if it's not something that is recognized by the state of Illinois as a legal way of voting, we need to be done with this.
Trustee Johnson.
I do want to respond. I don't want to be too critical. I do think some of the things that have been said are incorrect. First of all, this notion that more places have undone ranked choice voting than have approved it is completely false. There's a lot of studies that have been done of municipalities that have employed ranked choice voting, and they all show that once voters use it, a majority of voters really like it. Also, this notion that we're 10 years off and that ranked choice voting is a really pie in the sky proposal, Evanston has already approved this. They are waiting for essentially the Cook County Clerk's office to stop dragging their feet. I've talked to folks on the state task force.
Excuse me,
Choice
can I
vote.
have a point of order here? As something I've stated in the past. You are campaigning again now. You have started campaigning on this issue. You have just accused us about being unethical if we vote for something. Now you are trying to push your agenda. It is unethical for you to do that. You have been warned about that in the past.
Trustee.
I will say, I have been an advocate of ranked choice voting for many years inside this chamber and outside of this chamber. I'm not, just because I support a policy decision does not mean I have a
Did you
conflict
put
of
that in
interest.
your campaign
Yeah,
literature,
trustee.
yes or no?
Trustee Klein, please.
All right.
Okay.
Please.
I do want to say this, folks from the state task force that I've talked to have emphasized that there are some questions about the actual physical machines, but that most of the issue is software. So a lot of the logistical problems can and will be solved. If we approve this, if voters approve it, then we're in line. So if this is 2 years from now, if this is 4 years from now, if it's a worst case scenario and it's 10 years from now, we're in line and ready to go.
I have a question. With the date being proposed here as beginning April 2029 consolidated election, let's say that time comes around and there hasn't been any recommendations from the states. We're still in limbo. Evanston still has not implemented ranked choice voting. Where does that leave the village of Skokie if we're saying in the referendum, the voters are saying that beginning April 2029, we should begin ranked choice voting, but we are unable to fulfill that request because the software or the system has not caught up yet to the implementation of it.
Well, you have, let me start with, you have a critical partner in this process, and that's the county, both the state and the county. But the county is responsible for the logistics of the voting process, for the election equipment, for the timing, for notices, for all aspects of the logistical process. So until the county is ready to implement a process of this kind, and I am assuming that at some point, if this initiative continues to move forward in multiple municipalities, that we will continue to receive feedback from the county, especially Cook County, as to where they stand with preparations for implementation of this kind of a system. My understanding from Cook County and perhaps all the counties across the state is they also believe that they will need direction from the General Assembly, not just the resources, but they will need direction from the General Assembly as to how to implement this kind of a system.
So again, where would that leave the village if those decisions are not made by then?
Well, I will defer to your corporation counsel as well, but if there are no logistics in place to implement the system, first of all, I don't think it can be practically accomplished. And if there is no legal change to the election code as may be required, it would be an unlawful practice to move forward with.
It would be, it would create the conundrum you're implying, and we'd have to examine at that time what the village should or could do then to clarify why we're not abiding by a referendum that was passed that was not capable of being fulfilled. I also mentioned to you again, the discussion should also include a concern for putting something out there to the voters, whether it's an educational comment or just they're voting on it, reading it, and then walking away assuming it's going to happen. The voter confusion is an obligation of village government and all governments to make sure we are not creating confusion amongst the electorate, which we all know is sometimes very hard to get out to vote anyway. So whatever you decide to do, you have to think about how you will present and educate the voting community on it should it not be able to be carried out. Now, it could be done through education, discussion, publicity, whatever, but it is our obligation not only to respond if it is illegal, but to respond in terms of re-educating the voting public.
But isn't that the conundrum that Evanston is in?
Yes.
I mean, at their last council meeting, I believe they took up the subject and decided to approach the clerk and see if they could persuade the new clerk to create new software to implement it, and the clerk has said he can't. I don't know. It's an interesting situation. Yes, ma'am.
Judy Mendel, Skokie resident. I have a question because, you know, anytime the board hears, oh, it's going to be expensive, the elections, it's not more expensive for us, it's more expensive for Cook County, correct? Yeah, so that, it doesn't add anything to Skokie's budget. And I would just like to say that even if it's 10 years from now and it's on our agenda to start in 2029, which is 5 years from now, I just think it's a good thing because it gives people maybe more, once they understand it, which, you know, education's a key thing, I think people will like it and feel that their vote counts and can actually vote for who they really feel like.
But bear in mind, the problem, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but under state law, when we put something on the ballot, the village of Skokie cannot, anytime we provide information, we would have to provide the pro and the con.
Oh, sure.
We cannot put our hand on the scale.
No, for sure.
Okay.
No, for sure. I'm just saying that,
okay.
why not put it on the ballot? And if it can't be implemented because Cook County doesn't want to implement it because of the party in power or whatnot, so be it. But I don't know why it can't be on the ballot.
Okay. Thank you. Oh,
I do want to just address, there's this tension that we've been kind of dancing around between, does there need to be state legislative action first, or do we really have home rule authority to move forward with this? Just last year, when we were implementing the 2022 electoral reforms, we implemented one reform, hybrid representation, which is not clearly outlined in our state election code for village municipal governments. Someone questioned our implementation, and we asked an attorney from KTJ to weigh in. And they weighed in strongly on the side of home rule. They weighed in strongly on the side of us having the authority to adopt this. The implementation measures, you know, with the Cook County Clerk's Office and software machines and all that stuff, that's really the Cook County Clerk's Office headache. But if the question of, do we have the home rule authority to adopt this and ask for this, the answer is clearly yes.
Thank you for bringing, David Lipsix, thank you for bringing up that point. I actually have a question for somebody from KTJ. Are you the end-all be-all as to whether or not that is legally binding?
David,
Yes.
address the board.
Well.
Address the board
I
with your
apologize.
question. That's okay.
Is KTJ's legal memo to that question the only thing that matters?
The only thing that
The
matters.
only thing that matters about whether or not it's a legal way to do things?
It's their opinion or their interpretation of.
Correct. And is there another opinion that may be just as?
There may be.
There may be. Okay, thank you.
That's why we employ thousands of lawyers to read the same law. Trustee Sucken.
I mean, I know this is already written, but what about the date of April 2029? Can that be changed on this question?
It can.
So it could be 4 years from then?
Well, you would want to time it with your election cycle, most likely. So yes, it can be changed to another April odd-numbered year, if that's the preference of the board.
It's an advisory referendum.
Right.
The reason, I think we discussed this briefly at your last meeting. The reason the timing was connected to the 2029 election was the task force was charged with completing its work by the primary election in 2028. So the next election that would be available for local municipal voters would be the 2029 election.
Mayor, just to clarify what you said, is this an advisory or
I'm
binding?
sorry, yes.
Binding?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes. I misstated, sorry.
Voting, so I do want to just kind of end this discussion on a positive note. Ranked choice voting is a really meaningful electoral reform. There's a reason why it's become one of the kind of most common new electoral reforms across the United States. It promotes majority support. It really discourages negative campaigning. It gives voters more choices. It minimizes strategic voting. It's a huge win for voters. And so no matter what the Cook County Clerk's Office is going through or the state, I think we would be really proud to have Skokie in line to implement this as soon as possible.
Well, I think the discussion's been very useful for all of it. Yes, trustee Sutton.
I just want to say again that this is a question that we're putting out to the voters. This has nothing to do with what I think either way, or you think either way. This is about, should we put this out to the voters the way it's written, and it has to be what was the word you used?
Self-implementing.
Self-implemented. That's the question on the floor.
And I don't hear
You have a citizen.
trustee Kuhn.
Given that there are concerns about the implementation ability from the county and guidance from the General Assembly, in consideration that there isn't an immediate recommendation not from the task force, and we're thinking that implementation timeline could be potentially longer, I'd like to propose that we amend that date to 2036, just to give us a little bit more time for implementation. Has to be an odd year.
I mean,
So
my suggestion would be, rather than a date like 2036, we just do nothing and let the state proceed and see what happens, and then a future board can take it up again. Once the Evanston case is clarified, which we will know next year.
So you recommend keeping at the current recommended date?
I'm just saying we don't put it on the ballot. Rather than change the date and get into a whole hassle with the state and all that. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm just curious, is that if you put a date on there and it's a self-implementing referendum and the county doesn't come forward and do the programming, I know everybody thinks it magically gets done, it doesn't cost anything. The most expensive component is the software and the adaptation of that software. So is then Skokie on the hook for the cost of writing that code in order for those ballots to be cast on a self-implementing 2029 date?
It's proprietary to the county, so we wouldn't be able to start writing software for the county. And it goes back to what I suggested before, which would, if we end up in that situation, it would be a conundrum at that time to figure out what action the village takes to unwind itself from this referendum.
Well, I think Mr. Johnson needs to hear that, because he's saying that by home rule, we can just snap our fingers and implement it, but we won't have the software to do the balloting, correct?
That's the problem that Evanston has right now.
So home rule or not, we won't have the physical or the software to do it unless, for some reason, we're allowed under home rule to write our own code, which is gonna cost a considerable amount of money.
It would mean the code, the machinery, everything, and I don't believe that the state election law would give us that power, home rule or not.
Thank you.
Just to clarify my comment, you know, we have the home rule authority to adopt this. The implementation, that's Cook County, and whatever cost there would be, which they're already having to work on because of Evanston, it would not come from the village. So there's kind of the question of adoption, there's question of implementation. Okay. It is.
There is a state certification that's required for this voting equipment as well. That's not in the hands of the county.
Didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Thank you. Unless anybody wants to proceed with action, we can move on to term limits, where I think there might be.
I move that we approve tonight's resolution.
Okay. Dies for lack of a second. So,
I'm sorry, I really, you know, we discussed this, I'm confused because we discussed this at length in April and May, and almost everyone on the board talked about wanting to give voters this choice. I don't understand why we're not proceeding tonight.
I can speak for myself. I'm not proceeding because I was very clear at the last meeting that I'm not comfortable proceeding with something that is not recognized yet by the state of Illinois.
okay. Move on to the, briefly, please.
I'm brief.
We're gonna move on.
Sir, I just want to be one to say thank you. You made this very clear for me. And going into this, there was some objection to going to outside counsel, and I just want to thank you, and I think you did an excellent job of educating me at least, and it was money well spent, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. Very difficult task. Appreciate it very much. Next is a resolution providing for a question concerning the establishment of term limits.
There's also, in regard to this document that's in front of you, a Scribner error that we came upon and others have called out. On page 2 of the resolution in the box, the correct number appears 2 in parentheses, but stylistically, and it's only stylistically, and that's why we consider it a Scribner error, the word 2, TWO, should come before the parenthetical number 2.
Is there a motion? First of all, let me ask, is there a motion?
I move that we adopt the term limits referendum as stated.
Is there a second? Trustee Kuhn, any comments or any questions?
Let's have the hard conversation about conflicts of interest that Trustee Klein alluded to earlier. This board is actively interfering in a voter-initiated referendum campaign. There is an active term limits and ranked choice voting, dual questions that are paired together, that are being circulated by Skokie voters. This board has a long history of interfering in voter initiatives. We've talked about this at length in the past. I was under the understanding that this board was operating under a mentality of, so we can avoid, quote unquote, interfering with an active political campaign, that this board would kind of go all in and support both. If this board rejects ranked choice voting and approves term limits, you are literally kind of splitting a local voter initiative apart. This board is, yeah, I'm a little shocked by the last vote because I just assumed after over 3 months of work and trustees talking about wanting to support voters, if we're not going to do ranked choice voting, then we need to back off. We need to not interfere in voter initiatives. If we're not going to support you know, this dual campaign, we need to stay out of it. So I don't really
Well,
understand what's going on tonight.
Term limits, nobody has a propriety on term limits. Members of the board, in fact, told me some time ago that they wanted this put on the ballot. This is nothing new. Lauren?
Since it's on the agenda, I'm gonna make these comments again, even though I've sent them to you separately as an email, because I can't give you highlighted stuff here. But term limits tend to have negative repercussions and don't always have the desired effects. And this is not some hypothetical. This is coming from political science professors who have the data, who shared this with me and I shared with you. And I feel like it's a little bit like giving somebody a needle with heroin and letting them say, oh, you decide whether you want to take it or not. Like, you don't give them the needle with heroin because it has negative effects also. So I urge you not to put this on the ballot at all. If people want this, let them work for it and do it the hard way instead of just handing them this thing that's not necessarily good for them.
Are there any other comments or questions? If not,
I will say I'm really profoundly disappointed by what is about to take place. It's been 2 years since this board almost majorly blocked voter initiatives from the ballot in a completely unethical measure. And here we are again, pretending to support voters and voter initiatives, and this board is about to majorly interfere in a voter initiative again. This
call the
is,
roll, please.
yeah.
Trustee Sudker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
I abstain. I want no part of this.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
I'm not clear on this, so I'm gonna abstain also.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye. The motion passes. Next item on the agenda is 2 Plan Commission items. Chairman Paul Luke.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. First case tonight is case 2024-13P, an amendment to the comprehensive plan. And I'm gonna ask Joe Manschek to step up, since he has presided over the subcommittee, and he will give its report. Joe? And Joe, would you, when you come up, would you identify members of the commission?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Luke. I was one member. I was not the presiding member. I was one of many volunteers that was part of the subcommittee. There's a few members here. Abigail and Jeff were both on the committee as well. I think that's it. There was several of us. I've got a written statement here that describes our work over the last several months. Again, I'm Joe Mashek. I'm a village resident, member of the Housing Subcommittee, and also a member of the Appearance Commission. I'm here tonight representing the subcommittee to recommend that the Village Board approve the amended Chapter 6 of the comprehensive plan that we had worked on. As members of the Village Board, you established the Housing Subcommittee of the Plan Commission to study, review, and provide recommendations regarding the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. The committee was comprised of members from various commissions and committees as well as community members. The members of the subcommittee were appointed by the board in August of 2023. Through the process of revising the chapter, the subcommittee held 7 meetings beginning in October 2023 through May 2024 to review the existing comprehensive plan, brainstorm relevant themes, and begin to revise the housing chapter. Village staff prepared and provided updated data, demographic information, and a wealth of other information to help us analyze the population trends in the village. We then proposed 4 ideas to create the outline for the chapter, beginning with flexibility of housing, character of our neighborhoods, reasonable standards, meaning how do we implement and preserve the consistency of the neighborhoods and protect and conserve. Two community engagement events were organized to review relevant themes. One was in the evening and one was in the afternoon, so that we could get a good cross-section of the residents, to review relevant themes and topics and to receive valuable public input to be addressed in the revised housing chapter. A survey was also created and distributed online and in person at several locations to supplement the information gained from the community engagement meetings. The survey served to inquire about the public's opinion on new themes proposed by the subcommittee and the most relevant issues surrounding housing in Skokie. After receiving community input, we worked through several revisions and arrived at the revised 4 key themes to reflect the public input we received. One was community enhancement. That is, to foster developments that create public spaces that support a greater sense of community in Skokie's neighborhoods, and also encourage walkability, pedestrian-oriented development, and sustainable practices. Promote accessibility by guiding residential developments to include dynamic pedestrian environments, bicycle access, and safe intermodal connections. 2, housing type flexibility. Provide a flexible housing policy that allows for a greater mix of housing development that is more accessible, attainable for a broad range of incomes, and encourages sustainable practices. Promote a variety of housing types and sizes within the village to meet the housing demand of the growing and evolving population. Reasonable standards. This is to provide housing policy that allows for a range of housing development that caters to the current needs of families in the village. Consider the needs of current residents and promote policy that protects and assists longtime residents and homeowners. And 4, reinvent and retain. Encourage the development and redevelopment of a variety of housing types through housing policy and housing development activities. Support adaptive reuse and modification to existing housing stock. With the work done over a period of about 8 months, along with the public input from the meetings and the survey, the Housing Subcommittee finalized the themes and created a final version of the housing chapter for the Plan Commission to provide a positive recommendation to the Village Board. This was approved at the May 28th meeting unanimously by the Plan Commission. The Housing Subcommittee is confident that the new housing chapter encompasses the interests of Skokie residents and addresses the need for adaptable, attainable, and a wide range of housing types. The village has always been committed to accommodating the village's ever-evolving population, and with an eye towards the future of housing by staying true to the commitments of the past and understanding the needs of the residents to ensure a viable community into the future. All of which I believe we aim to accomplish, and we did with this revised chapter, with the redraft of the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. With that, I'd like to thank all of the members that were part of the volunteer committee, as well as Johanna and her staff, particularly Justin and Jose, which really were the impetus to get this accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you. First, a motion would be Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Are there any comments or questions? Trustee Kuhn.
First of all, I appreciate the work of the subcommittee and in defining the vision and framework for the housing chapter. And this may be putting the cart before the horse, but I wonder if there were any discussions about a housing study and when that might fit in with our overall strategy.
Through each of the meetings, there was a lot of discussion about varying parts of what this committee is. And over the even though it's several months, over 8 meetings, it was still a lot to accomplish just to revise. First of all, educate all of us about what a comprehensive plan is, which is a roadmap, and it's more of a roadmap than a detailed, here's policy. And so once we got through that, we were able to start working on the themes and actually create the new chapter. We often talked about affordable housing. We often talked about the subcommittee and what the role is. but to get the chapter revised was a task in itself. And I think with help of staff, they helped guide us to get this task done. Had we expanded beyond it, which we all wanted to do, because the committee was actually, I have to say, I've been on a lot of committees, and this one, there was several of us who were really involved. You know, there's some people that, you know, can make it, sometimes not, because we're all volunteers, but it was a pretty dynamic committee, which had we started to get beyond our task of revising the chapter, we'd still be upstairs.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the work.
Well, here goes.
We have the fire chief in the room, and so he'll advise us of actions that we need to take.
Let's take shelter now.
We'll let the fire chief do it because Julie and the finance director has left the room already.
Questions?
I'll just a comment. I'm absolutely going to support this chapter update. There's no harm in it, but I do just want to say, we don't need to update a single chapter. We need to update our entire comprehensive plan. This is a document that guides our village policymaking that is now almost 20 years old. Our comprehensive plan was written and designed long before the financial and housing crisis in 2008, long before COVID, long before many years of political and economic unrest, before we had a sustainability commission and a sustainability plan. Our comprehensive plan is greatly outdated, and this idea that we can just kind of patchwork, add a chapter here, revise a chapter here, I think is really misguided, because this is supposed to be, you know, a literally comprehensive document. So I will support this chapter update, but I do think this is, like many things the board has done tonight, which I'm obviously frustrated about, a complete half measure to where we really need to go.
Trustee Kuhn.
I'm gonna ask our village manager, and corp counsel to help answer this, but my understanding is that the comprehensive plan is a living document that is evolving. It's not something that was started 20 years ago and ended there, but it has been an evolution that has continued to be reviewed on a chapter by chapter basis as needed, as our needs evolve over time. Can you provide some more context for that, just to dispel any misunderstanding or misnomers around how old the document is and what its purpose is?
Yes, I think you've hit a number of highlights in your remarks, and I'm going to ask Johanna to speak as well. She's our community development director and really responsible for the comprehensive plan. But as you stated, the comprehensive plan is a visionary document, and it guides policy. There's a number of chapters within the comprehensive plan that deals with specific areas, and housing is one. And before you tonight is a new housing chapter that took basically a year to create, and a significant discussion and amount of work. And so if we choose to go down a path of saying we need to revise the whole comprehensive plan and embark upon that, we may shortchange each chapter and not be able to get into, you know, the details and really you know, discuss those and plan for the future. But comprehensive plans also react to the market and to the economy. And so as we have experienced the things over the last few years, a comprehensive plan that was created during COVID would be different than one that was created prior to or after. And so our approach of reviewing content as it's deemed appropriate has served us well. If we had no other responsibilities and we could just sit down and focus on all the different sections and you know, and really dive in and research each of those, you know, that might be one approach. But in reality, our chapter by chapter approach has served us well. And Johanna, I'd like for you to comment as well.
Sure. One of the standards that Skokie has been the update of the chapter by chapter approach, and I think it does give us the ability to focus on particular areas. Housing and the issues that this body has raised and others have raised has given us the chance to focus on housing right now. The transportation chapter is really owned by in some ways, but while it's owned by the village, engineering staff, as well as the planning staff, take part in reviewing that as well. And we're looking at ways that we can update that to reflect changes in transportation. The sustainability chapter that was added, the environment chapter, that was added after the plan, and it really was able to capture some of the ideas from the 2016 plan and put that into the comprehensive plan, and then create that space so you can further add to it. So this gives the other really nice thing about the Skokie plan and the chapter by chapters, we often have staff and volunteers preparing those chapters, and that's a very solid long-term planning practice where you have your professional staff and volunteers who are able to wordsmith and write words and consider. I mean, this chapter, while painful at moments, the group really went over sentence by sentence and tried to understand the implications. Sometimes when you do a whole plan, which I worked on in my career, you don't get the chance to really go sentence by sentence, word by word, and there's sometimes something lost. It doesn't feel as homegrown. It might feel a little more cookie cutter. There's also going chapter by chapter and not doing a whole plan at this moment also gives you opportunity to do some other things and think about neighborhood plans or smaller plans or specific activity plans or demographic analysis or other studies that can help feed those and inform that.
Thank you, and I just want to reiterate, I really appreciate the work of the subcommittee, especially as volunteers who are spending your time over the past year to help inform and guide that and working with staff and just the expertise from staff and also outside resources as well. So I do appreciate that and just want to emphasize that appreciation and the magnitude of the work that you're doing. We do see it and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Sutker.
Is it common for municipalities to go chapter by chapter like we do? You said it's standard for Skokie, but is it also a practice that you see amongst other municipalities?
I think honestly the practice I see more often is not doing updates and waiting for a long time between full comprehensive plans. I think it's an expensive undertaking if you wanted to do a full comprehensive plan. So you often see 20, 30 years could go by. The community that's been mentioned quite a bit this evening waited a very long time, and they're doing a full update. They did not do chapter by chapter. I think that creates those kinds of things that can make a longer, bigger update more challenging. We've been doing chapter by chapter, which gives us a more dynamic plan that reflects the current. I think our plan looks more like a plan that has evolved and grown with Skokie over the years versus one that is going to capture the snapshot of a planning effort right now and then might not get a full redo for another 10, 15 years. So those are planning documents that can live and breathe are better. Unless we're California, legally they have to update their plans constantly. They have to update every, I think, 3 years. Illinois does not have that. So we are left to make the best choices, and chapter by chapter really is a good way to keep planning activities current and relevant and affordable for communities, because it is no small undertaking to do a massive plan. It takes staff time, it takes consultant time potentially, and other experts that may have to be brought in to do a process.
I mean, I really liked that it's a live document that's looked at on a continuous, steady basis over time, So thank you for your work.
Call the roll.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Purslovan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes.
My next case is case 2024-16P, request for a special use permit at 8266 Lincoln Avenue. At the June 6th meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed the request of RPL Lincoln LLC for a special use permit to operate a child care not in a residence at 8266 Lincoln Avenue in a TX Transit Mixed-Use Zoning District. Guidepost Montessori, which intends to operate out of a new two-story building, will accommodate a total of 151 children between the ages of 6 months, and 6 years. There will be a total of 17 staff members, including teachers and administrators. Daycare hours of operation will be from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The drop-off arrival window is from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., and pickup departure window is from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. The site will provide 3 spaces in front designated for drop-off and pickup, and on 7 on-site parking spaces in the rear of the building, off of the alley, accessible on Laramie Avenue. The location provides nearby street parking and is served by Pace Bus 210 on Lincoln Avenue throughout the daycare. Although the daycare will serve up to 151 children, that does not mean that there will be 101 individuals there on a daily basis with 151 daily trips for pickup and drop-offs. The petitioner shared that many parents are dropping off more than one child at a time, and found this to be true at other Guidepost Montessori locations in neighboring communities, which helps alleviate some of the traffic in the area. Staff requested to amend the staff report to reflect a change in the first special use condition regarding the payment into the parking fund. Staff is not requiring this fee in lieu payment into the parking lot fund prior to the hearing before the Board of Trustees, but rather prior to issuance of building permits. Staff would not require payment into the parking fund before approval from the board. Commissioners share concern about major traffic congestion on Lincoln Avenue due to the volume of staff and children that will occupy the city, occupy the daycare, in relationship to the number of parking spaces and pickup and drop-off zones that are provided on site. The petitioner went on into detail about Guidepost Montessori's operation plans and how they intend to manage pickup and drop-off for this location. With pickup and drop-off windows spread out over 2.5 hours in the morning and from 7:30 to 9, and 3 hours in the evening from 3 to 6, staff will be able to manage efficiently drop-offs and dismissals without creating significant congestion on Lincoln Avenue. One commissioner asked if the Appearance Commission review was required. At the July 10th meeting of the Appearance Commission, the Appearance Commission reviewed building elevations for the proposed daycare at 8266 Lincoln Avenue. Revised elevations were presented at the meeting and approved with conditions of increasing the height of the front elevation windows to line up with the top of the front entrance, enhancing the front elevation by incorporating brick shading and adding signage and artwork within the front elevation above the front entrance. A certificate of appropriateness was awarded by the Appearance Commission. The Plan Commission recommends on a vote of 5 ayes and no nays with 3 members absent that the petitioner be approved.
A motion is in order on Plan Commission Case 2024-16P, special use permit for 8266 Lincoln Avenue. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Kuhn. Other comments or questions? Trustee Klein.
Yes, I just have one question. It's, I think schools are a great use of land, but the drop-off in the morning, do they have any plans or a drop-off area?
They do have a designated area in front and in the back.
Okay, so they're gonna have do you have anything with it, Johanna?
So this was the exact questions and conversation that was at the Plan Commission. Their drop-off and pickup time is spread out pretty extensively in the morning, so not everybody will be coming. It's not like a elementary or a middle school when everybody has to be there by 8 o'clock in their seats. Drop-off will be at different times. The number of children that can be served may vary on any day because you might have the Monday, Wednesday, Friday plan, so you might not, all 151 families aren't gonna be there. Also, you might have families that have multiple children. So 2 children might be dropped off, so it's not 151 families. The plan would be that there would be some drop-off in the front, and then there would be some drop-off in the back. They also anticipate that their Margaret will likely walk there may be families in the neighborhood that will walk. There may also be situations where, if there is a group of people that are arriving around the same time, they may shift their operations to help shuttle those children into the daycare more quickly than having the families walk the children in. So they have ability to pivot operationally. They have several urban locations that don't have dedicated drop-off areas. They're used to operating in these dense environments. So they anticipate being able to accommodate it.
So they have experience with this kind of thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I think this is fantastic. I'm very happy to support it. I think especially with parents having to work and giving them an option to be able to bring their children to a Montessori school in Skokie, really, I think addresses the needs of our community. So thank you.
Call the roll.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson is absent. Trustee Kuhn?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Hold on, I know. Trustee Sucker wanted to make a comment about Commissioner Michelle Friedman.
I don't think she came tonight, but she was reappointed to the,
Everybody bear in mind, we have a tornado coming.
yeah. I just wanted to congratulate her. She was recognized by the Network of Jewish Human Services Agencies with their Lay Leadership Award.
Very impressive woman. Trustee Pierce-Lovan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make it short as well. We live in an extraordinary country, and we must never take for granted the freedom it affords us. The 4th of July, which commemorates the ratification of the Declaration of Independence, is a national holiday, and we are privileged to celebrate at Skokie Village parades and fireworks. Thank you to everyone who worked behind the scenes and organized these beautiful celebrations. I especially want to thank the village's first responders, our police and firefighters who don't have the privilege of celebrating with their families and communities as they are called upon to ensure our safety. We owe a debt of gratitude to those who selfishly serve and protect. Thank you for your commitment and service to the residents of Skokie. It is in this vein that I ask that we receive for a future board meeting an updated analysis of our first responder staffing. I would like it to include how many officers are on disability, a prediction for the next 3 years of how many will be retiring, and how lateral opportunities might affect us. Unfortunately, today more than ever, we must work to ensure that we support our first responders as we are living in a more volatile world. Thank you again to our extraordinary police and fire departments and everybody who works behind the scenes to ensure our safety and celebrations. Thank you.
And the concluding item this evening is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board?
What? Want water? Oh.
Totally different topic. I'd like to talk today about embodied carbon. This quote from a movie called The Book of Eli always stuck with me. People had more than they needed. We had no idea what was precious, what wasn't. We threw away things people kill each other over now. Everything takes energy to make. It takes energy to harvest the raw materials, transport those materials to where they're going to be processed, and then those materials need to be processed, and then you've got to transport it to the factory that puts them together. And then you have to transport that to some central warehouse, which then distributes it, and all of this transportation has carbon emissions. And then when you're done with the thing, it takes energy for the refuse truck to come and get it and haul it away. Recycling only eliminates some of these emissions. Bottled water is particularly high in embodied carbon. By the way, embodied carbon is now what we used to call upstream and downstream emissions, so maybe you're familiar with that. Water has a lot of mass, so it needs a lot of energy to transport it. And either it's bottled at the tap, like Dasani, you're basically paying for tap water, or it's taken from communities that can't afford to lose the water, like what Nestle does with its water. And it costs the village money by increasing the volume of recycling or trash that needs to be hauled away, right? Like, so I'm not slamming bottled water just by itself, although maybe consider a special tax on just that in the village to kind of discourage people from purchasing it. The problem with embodied carbon is not just single-use stuff. Energy Star appliances actually take about 10 years to recoup the additional carbon that it takes just to make the thing. So unless you're going to have your washing machine or your refrigerator for more than 10 years, don't throw away your old one just to buy the more efficient one. Keep the old one until it breaks and then get the Energy Star. Clothing has a lot of embodied carbon, and it's terrible for the environment the way we make it, and it's terrible for the people who make it the way a lot of these factories operate. Consider buying used instead. All of these little decorations that people buy, like the gym that I go to, spent tons of money changing the light fixtures and putting these things out. Why? I don't know. Tap water also involves embodied carbon. It takes energy to clean it. It's what comes out of the outdoor spigots. Spraying this water on your lawn is a waste of water between the hours of 10 and 4 p.m. I mean, you don't really need to have this like picture perfect lawn, or maybe that's your taste, but okay. But between those times, especially between
Hey,
April
Lauren.
and, that's already 3? Okay. But
I mean,
anyway,
every
this is,
time the fire chief walks out, I get nervous.
oh, okay. But anyway, we do have an ordinance against doing this anyway, and it's not being enforced, so, to be continued.
Thank you.
My name is David Lefsix, and I am a Skokie resident. And unfortunately, I believe that I may be already too late with this speech that I really wasn't planning on making up until a few hours before this meeting. But I'm here in the wake of what happened in Pennsylvania over the weekend that has shaken our nation. I, too, echo Trustee Slovin's thanks for our first responders. On Saturday, we witnessed an assassination attempt on our former president. This incident serves as a stark reminder of the dangerous path that we walk when we allow our political discourse to be poisoned by the inflammatory language and rhetoric that we hear every time that we're here. I want to address a specific concern within our own community, and Trustee Johnson, I am talking specifically to you. Not out of condemnation, because we have sat together for many, many hours, talking in a very respectful way. But I speak out of a shared concern for the well-being of our village, of our state, and of our nation. Your words carry weight, and I implore you to consider the impact of your rhetoric, especially when directed at my corporation council, my mayor, my village manager, my assistant village manager, and to a lesser extent my clerk, and to the rest of my trustees. You are my trustee as well. When we vilify and dehumanize our political opponents, casting their actions again and again as criminal, we pave the way for division, hatred, and as we've seen, but hopefully we'll never see again, violence. Our strength as a constitutional republic lies in our ability to engage in respectful, constructive dialogue. We must hold ourselves to a higher standard of discourse, one that fosters understanding and cooperation rather than animosity. This is not about suppressing free speech. It is about recognizing the responsibility that comes with our words and the potential consequences they can have. 2 weeks ago, when talking about home rule, and earlier today, Skokie was referred to as a leader. Let us be that leader. The example that our country so desperately needs right now. Let us show that even in the face of deep political differences, we can come together, speak with respect, and work towards solutions that benefit us all. Trustee Johnson, I ask you to join me in this commitment to change the tone of our political conversations.
Sir, 3 minutes are up.
I have two more sentences.
Very quickly, please.
Let us work together to heal the divisions within our community and set a precedent for others. In that vein, I respectfully request you forego your speech from the public lectern, if only for tonight.
If there are no further comments, I'll be giving public comments from the public podium very respectfully and very oriented towards very positive policymaking. All right, good evening, Mayor and Trustees. For the 16th meeting in a row, I am speaking respectfully about the need to reform Skokie's legal department, and I'm asking you to end the political corruption in this department. Tonight, I'm going to break down the major ethics violation that's going to occur at our next meeting if all of you vote to steer over $421,000 of public money to your own political party and political campaign leaders. What is a conflict of interest? It's an important question. This is what's written in the Code of Ethics section of our village code. No elected official or other official or employee, whether paid or unpaid, shall engage in any business or transaction or shall have a financial or other personal interest which is incompatible with the proper discharge of such person's official duties in the public interest or would tend to impair such person's independence of judgment or action in the performance of their official duties. All of you have, and I'm speaking to the board, all of you have significant personal, financial, and political relationships with Corporation Counsel Lorge and Assistant Corporation Counsel McCarthy. They have led your local political party. They have donated thousands of dollars to your political campaigns. They have sponsored political fundraisers for you. They led your party's slating process that selected you as candidates for these offices. They led the petition process that got you all on the ballot. McCarthy was the chair of your last election campaign. They render private services for you, and you respond by rewarding them with high-paying, influential public positions in our village government. That is political hiring. That is political corruption. Are your personal, financial, and political interests with Lorge and McCarthy incompatible with the proper discharge of your official duties? Of course they are. I have personally told you about how Lorge and McCarthy were sent to bribe and threaten me when I was a candidate for office, and you've done nothing. I gave you information about how this has happened to another Skokie resident. You've done nothing. I've asked you to improve our code of ethics and our 1950s era appointment process, really common sense decisions. You've done nothing. The mayor has canceled in-person performance reviews of Corporation Counsel Lorge, and you've done nothing. You've witnessed how our village attorneys cover up the board's open meetings violations, and you've done nothing. So are your personal, financial, and political interests with Lorge and McCarthy impairing your independence of judgment or action in your duties? Of course they are. At our next meeting, if you vote to rehire and steer over $421,000 to these employees, despite their misconduct and failures, you will be violating our code of ethics. Your overt personal, financial, and political conflicts of interest with these village attorneys are clearly impairing your judgment and actions. And from my perspective, there's really no other reasonable explanation for your behavior. That's the end of my comments. I will just say, in response to the last speaker, I have made some really critical comments. Never of our village manager or assistant village manager.
Tornado near O'Hare, so.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
Trustee Sucker.